Hey guys, thanks for joining us. Today we're going to be getting personal with Diamond. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So first, we're going to want to talk about a little bit about your early years and your early childhood. So tell me about the first time you really understood the concept about money.
I would say I was around 8 or 9,
Mm-hmm.
and I grew up with a single mom who worked really hard to raise my sister and I, but sometimes struggled to make ends meet. So she would lean on things like payday loans. And I remember I have vivid memories of going to the payday loan place with her, sitting outside. And that's when I fully began to understand kind of what money was, seeing her kind of struggle to find it for us and use it for our household.
So basically, before we even go any deeper into that, some of our viewers may not know what a payday loan is or why this may have been so traumatizing for you.
Yeah. Back then, I just thought it was this place where my mom just went to get money. Like, it was very simplistic. I was just like, oh, my mom needs money. We go and we get it. But I began to ask questions as I got a little older, and she explained to me that it was a place for people who needed money until they basically got paid again, where she could go and get that. Obviously, now I understand a lot more about the high interest rates and all of that, but I didn't understand that back then.
So how old are you now?
I'm 26.
26. Yeah. So you've done undergrad, you've gone through college. Yep. What would you say were your best lessons learned as a child and now that you've used through college? Because you lived on your own, I'm assuming, and had to take care of yourself through college.
Yes. Budgeting. So when I first got into college, I went to college on a scholarship. So everything was paid for. I didn't have to worry about how am I going to afford food or how am I going to afford my rent. Like, it was all paid for, which was a blessing, but it really prevented me from learning about budgeting. And so then I got my first job out of college and I had to figure it out very quickly. Mm-hmm. And that was a very steep learning curve. Didn't know what tools to use. I didn't know how much I should be spending on different things. So that's where I really just leaned on resources on the web and things like that to help me budget. But I actually moved to Chicago after school, from Texas to Chicago.
Oh, wow.
So I knew I was going to be living in this new place.
Huge
difference in terms of like everything, cost of living, especially though. So I was like, I need to figure this out. So once I found out how much money I would be making, I figured out how much I would be taking home. I just pulled out a spreadsheet and was like, okay, here's how much I'll be taking home. I need to figure out how much I can afford in rent so I can know where I can afford to live. That was the biggest thing. Like, how much can I afford to pay for rent?
So let's give our viewers some context. Sorry. So like, when you say Texas to Chicago, what was that difference like? Was it like, I'm going to be spending like $1,000 more on rent? Like, how was that shock for you?
I would say it's not terrible, but it was probably like $600-700 as far as quality of place. If it was the same in both places, like $700 more, which is a lot of money for your first job. Yeah. So I was like, I'm not sure if I can live in some of these places. Like, I had to really think about like where can I
humble yourself
live.
real quick.
Like, I have to take it down a few notches. Like, I saw myself living in this super nice apartment with like granite countertops, and I just could not afford that.
So that just goes to show for our viewers, like, coming right out of college, everything isn't so, like, it takes some planning to really get what you want and where you want to live. And sometimes you need a reality check.
Yes, I needed a huge reality check.
So what other things did you include in your budget?
Definitely food. Okay. I think where I failed was entertainment spending. So like restaurants.
Oh, yep.
I thought it was realistic. I was like, oh, I'll spend maybe $50 a month on
restaurants. 50 a week.
And I thought for some reason that sounded realistic. So I was like, okay, $50 a month, entertainment. That's like everything. Restaurants, shows, anything like that. I was like, that's fine. That was not fine.
You blow $50 in one dinner.
Yeah, that's one dinner actually. So that took a long time for me to figure out how much to budget for that actually. Yeah. Okay. Just utilities. That stuff was easy to plan for, right? You know how much that's going to be.
It's a fixed cost.
Yeah. But for me, one thing was going home to visit. So I wanted to budget money to travel home, and that was a huge expense that changes so much because you never know how much plane tickets are going to be. So that really threw me off so many times. When it comes to plane tickets, just always budget a lot more than you think you're going to need. Because even when it comes to like Ubers to the airport, just little stuff like that I didn't take.
It adds up.
It adds up so quickly. Yeah.
So now we're going to talk about working and sort of income. So one of the questions that we have for you is, have you ever had to negotiate a salary? And if so, like, how did that go?
So I have had to negotiate a salary. It was a terrifying experience. And looking back.
Why was it terrifying?
I just don't know that I really feel like I was worth what I was asking, which I think a lot of people struggle with that early in their career. You think you're just asking, you're like, they're going to say no, and then you think, do I really deserve this? But I was going to do it anyway because I was like, why not? So I was starting a new job, and they made me an offer, and I thought the offer was low. So I came back with the counter offer, and basically they came back and said, we really don't negotiate for more junior level roles. And I was going to let it go, but I was like, no, I'm not going to let it go. Like, I went back and forth. And so I went back and said, well, you know, I'm moving to a new place. I kind of just laid out all these things. Here's what I've accomplished. It fits the job profile this way. Here's what I'll bring extra to the company. Just laid it all out. They came back with a very small, I'm talking about a baby, just increase. Step up. And I was like, I would actually prefer, and then I came back again. So this went back and forth maybe, I want to say 4 or 5 times. And it was terrifying because this was for a junior role. Yeah. But we ended up.
How soon out of school was this role?
This was, so let me think. This was probably like 3 years.
Okay. Like so you've had 3 years experience.
I had like 2
already.
or 3 years of experience at this point. Yeah. And so this was the first time I'd actually ever negotiated. Previous jobs I had not negotiated.
Did you ever like consult somebody before you did it on like best practices? You just did it?
I just did it. I just felt like it was too low.
Yeah.
And I just did it. Yeah.
So then what was the end result? Like how?
We ended up coming to a middle ground. It wasn't what I wanted, but I'm sure it wasn't what they wanted either. So it ended up being a somewhat okay increase. Looking back, I wish I would have held my ground on my initial ask, but I also didn't know really what I was doing at the time. Yeah.
Did you ever like ask anybody about negotiating after you did it the first time, basically your experience, to see if anybody else had gone through the same thing? So how did that go?
That was so helpful because they helped me realize that almost everyone should be negotiating.
Really?
Honestly, in most cases. Obviously, there's situations where that doesn't make sense, but for a lot of people, the company is going to offer you the lowest they can, right? And so it's on you to come back and say, here's what I'm worth. So that helped me see that it's more common than I thought it was.
So basically, for our viewers that are watching, when you're going in to negotiate a salary, what are the things that you think it's most important to show when you're asking?
I think it's important to show what value do you bring beyond the job description. They're hiring you because they know you can do the job, but it's like, what extra are you bringing to the company?
So let's give them an example. How were you extra to that company? What did you value that you brought to the company more?
Yeah, I think I was hired to do a very specific type of marketing, but I had experience with other marketing channels. So I had expertise there, and I saw ways we could leverage other channels. And even though that wasn't what the job required, I said, we may need this down the line. I have experience in this. I've done it well. And just outlining what that looked like.
Okay, so now we're going to get to the fun stuff. So first we're going to do a free word association. I'm going to toss out a couple words to you, and you're going to tell me the first thing that comes to mind. And then we're going to do a little trivia.
Okay.
You ready?
Yes.
Okay. So the first word is college.
Track.
Did you run track in college?
Did, yes.
Nice. Debt.
Bad.
I agree. 401k.
More, because I need to be saving more in my 401k.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now we're going to get into some trivia. So how many lenders do you go to before you actually take out a loan? How many companies do you actually check out? What is like a good amount, you'd say?
Like what kind of loan?
Just any, let's say you want like a mortgage or a school loan.
Okay.
Do you just go to the first one that you find?
No.
What do you think?
I would say maybe a solid number is like 4 to 5.
That's good. That's actually more than what they recommend.
Okay.
The quiz actually said at least 3 different companies before you choose the company loan that you want to go with.
Yeah.
So that's great. And then, is your employer required to withhold taxes from your pay?
Yes.
That's correct. Good job. Thank you so much for sharing your money story and letting us get personal.
Thank you so much for having me. This was great.
Join us later, guys. Bye.